Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Growing Bolder. Now, I'm walking. I don't know how your day's going. I'm walking in the door. Sit down, get ready. Nice. It's going to be a good show, good prep, everything going well. And they go, oh, it's Happy Friday the 13th. Why do people do that to each other, right? We're tempting fate. It's almost like saying, I hope something bad doesn't happen to you. Ha, ha, ha. All right, so let's put that out of our mind. We're going to completely ignore Friday the 13th. Just another day. And if anything weird happens to you, you can let me know next week. This is our weekly live streaming program that we bring to you on YouTube, on Twitch, and on Facebook. And we got a great topic for you today. Here's what we want to know. Tell us right now, what are the stupid things you vow not to do when you get old? You know what I'm talking about. It's like that insurance commercial where you start to become your parents. What are the things that they do that make you say, no way, oh my God, I am not going to do that when I get old? So think about that for a little bit and tell me what that means to you. We've got some people in the room already. Patricia Bishop, it's always great to see you. She is in Stafford, Texas. Of course, we are in Orlando. And what about that, right? Do you think about that? I think when we hit a certain age, we do start to wonder, am I starting to get old? Am I doing things a little different? And I was kind of wondering, do we know when it happens? Does it happen to us, or does this aging thing, is it something we just do to ourselves? Can everybody else tell that we're suddenly old? Do we see it? Are we the only ones who don't see it? Well, coming up, we've got a fantastic guest, and we are going to talk about just that. His name is Steven Petrow. He's an award-winning journalist. He's the author of a wonderful new book that starts out, this is what I like the most about the book. It starts out kind of being funny and lighthearted, and you think, just from what I've asked you, oh, this could be kind of hilarious, but it ends up aiming straight for your heart and being very poignant. It's called Stupid Things I Won't Do When I Get Old. So let's see how your thoughts compare to his. I think you're really going to enjoy him as he offers food for thought to kind of help us create the kind of old age for ourselves that we can be proud of, right? We shouldn't be embarrassed about anything. We're fortunate to become old. Let's do it the right way and be proud of ourselves. First of all, it was a big week here at Growing Bolder for a number of reasons. First, we were saddened by the passing of a good friend of Growing Bolder's, legendary football coach Bobby Bowden. We had just interviewed him earlier this summer about life, the lessons that he learned over his incredible career. And he gave us some words of wisdom, too. And it turned out to be the last in-depth interview that he ever gave. And you can check it out at growingbolder.com. Even if you don't know who he is, you can clearly see in the interview, just by how he handles himself and how relaxed he was at the age of 91, why he was such a treasure, and why the people that played for him, the team, when they would contact him later in life, it wasn't to talk about football plays or big games. It was to talk about the advice he gave them about life, about going through life, about handling adversity. It was a fascinating and heartwarming conversation with a legend. We'll probably never see another one like him, and that's available for you to see at growingbolder.com. More people in the room. Joanne Connie Miller is here from Kissimmee, Florida. Elizabeth Santon is watching from Annapolis, Maryland. How are you this morning, Elizabeth? Sarah Allen is in Novato, California, which is just a little bit north of San Francisco. Nancy Storms Dudas is watching from Ocala, Florida. You know, we're kind of sitting here. This little tropical thing was coming, and all the weather guys here got really excited about it. It doesn't look to be as powerful as they were thinking. I think, kind of there's so much crazy news going around. We were hoping for a little bit of a distraction, which is why they were watching it so closely. Hopefully it will be a rainmaker and kind of slide right by without really affecting anybody's life too much. So there is that. And all right, if you're watching us on YouTube or Facebook, you should take a minute at some point and follow us on Twitch. Okay, what's so special about Twitch? I thought Twitch, Bill, was all about gaming. Well, we do some crazy stuff. They're very interesting, and it's all designed as a way to better combine people of all ages because there really is magic in this intergenerational thing. No reason to put people in silos, right? Because none of us think we're the age we are. We all do better when we're interacting with each other. And really magic happens when younger people can understand and respect those of us who are over 50, over 60, over 70 and more. We stream live on twitch.tv every Thursday at 1 p.m. And yesterday we pulled out an old Wii console. Are those old? Everyone keeps saying they're old. They seem new to me. And we gave it a try. We played tennis, we did bowling, we did boxing, but the highlight was when Mark Middleton took on his wife Jill in a golf smackdown. This is unbelievable. This is great. These Mark and Jill started playing Wii when the lockdown started. Just slightly missed that one. That was a long putt, but what a great attempt. And they started playing and found how much they liked this. Jill's one of our producers. Look at that, right on the hole. Wii was pretty cool. The whole point is to attract people our age who really never thought of gaming, giving gaming a try, to rethink that and do it in a fun, safe, patient environment. There's Jill getting the medal, the Growing Boulder medal. It's not gold, silver, or bronze, but it is GB, and she was very excited about it. You know, it's an environment we can all learn together. It's social, it's active, and it's fun. And when you play online, the social part of it, the community is really supportive. It's very friendly, and it's really something different to check out. So go to twitch.tv and then follow Growing Boulder and click to turn on notifications so you do get a reminder when we are streaming. Getting a few comments in, too, about the question we asked off the top of the program about the way you think you will age. Patricia Bishop always has something interesting to add to the party. She says, I think when I get to the point when I can't find a reason to get out of bed in the morning, that is when I must be getting older instead of growing bolder. And she says, I never want that to happen to me. And we will talk about exactly that because, man, a sense of purpose is everything. You cannot understate how important it is to feel like there's a reason for you to get up and that there is something to do. So, hey, listen, people are starting to notice that we are not our parents when it does come to aging, to the point that this week an actual state agency, the Florida Council on Aging, announced that Growing Boulder would receive the council's prestigious Senior Vision Media Award, which honors the outstanding organization producing media promoting a positive image of aging. Positive image of aging. They really aren't that many out there, and we just don't do it here to make you feel better. First of all, what we're trying to do is reflect what's becoming the new normal, the new reality, and the new possibilities for us all at this life stage. In fact, Growing Boulder founder and CEO Mark Middleton excited to accept the award as a sign that, yes, even state agencies are starting to understand how important this is. And we're going to get more into that right now. You're listening to Growing Boulder. I'm Bill Schaefer, and I hate to have to be the one to tell you, but it's time we had to talk. Yep, probably the first one since your parents told you about the birds and the bees. This one equally is important, but very different. This one is about your clothes and your knees. Yeah, you're getting older. Listen, you're not the only one trying to avoid it. We all are, and we can, because our next guest has created sort of a blueprint for the new old age. He's a journalist and a columnist for the Washington Post, USA Today, a contributor to the New York Times, and I'm telling you, his articles are well worth checking out. They trigger your mind, and at the same time, he's got a way of being able to touch your heart too, because he writes about experiences from his own life in a way that makes you feel like you know him and that you've gone through them too. He writes about aging, health, and even subjects like manner and civility. He's written a book, and I want to give you the whole title. Are you ready? Stupid Things I Won't Do When I Get Old, a highly judgmental, unapologetically honest accounting of all the things our elders are doing wrong. It's a great title, and you know you've thought about that before. So the question is, are we destined to become our parents? Let's find out by saying hi to Steven Petrow. How are you, Steven?
I am very well, Bill, and happy Friday the 13th.
Uh, I asked you not to mention that again.
I know
Friday the
we had such a good rapport in the pre-show game that I wanted to tease you, and it's a,
are
it's
you
a real pleasure to be with you.
are you a superstitious person?
I'm not, but I'm anxiety ridden,
Aren't
and
we all?
the current climate does not help with that. But
No, I think if you're not ridden, it's because you're not paying attention. But
that's what.
let's go back to this. This is a great book. And I was very surprised when I picked it up and read it, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But what made you think, first of all, out of all of the topics you cover, out of all the great things that you do, I think I'll write about stupid things I won't do when I get old.
I know. But first of all, thank you very much for the nice things that you said about the book, and it's always gratifying to an author when a host like you gets it. So. But the way this book came about was very personal. I was in my early 50s, and my parents were in, I think, their mid 70s at that point. And I started, kind of paying attention to how they were moving into this chapter. And I'm the firstborn, and I've always been the one with the big mouth and, the smart aleck and so on and so forth. And so I started keeping this list of what I was calling, for myself, stupid things. And it was things like my mom didn't want to pick up the throw rugs that she loved in their house because they were beautiful, and they were beautiful, except that my dad was tripping over them. My dad was equally as stubborn. He continued to drive when he couldn't turn his neck. And so I just started writing these down. I probably had 100. And one of the things I do in my life is I often take the personal and I will write about it. And so this became a column in the New York Times. It was called the much more innocuous piece, Things I Will Do Differently When I Get Old. But that nonetheless, it became among the most read pieces for about 2 weeks on the Times site. And then I started getting emails from people, and I got about 200 lists of others, and they were doing the same thing. They were recording what their parents and the other elders in their orbit were doing wrong. And I said, you know what, Steven, that's a book. And my literary agent agreed. That's a book, because it seemed to be touching a lot of people. And it's not, while it's a lot about, stupid things, and it sounds like it's funny or it sounds like it's snarky, it's really about trying to understand how the next generation, how we can do better than our parents. And so it's not so much a criticism of them as really a way to make a pledge to ourselves. I'm going to do this, not that. And hopefully I'll be able to keep myself to those things. We'll see about that.
I think you teed it up so well in the book, because one of the things that you bring up and you talk about is something that we believe 1,000%. And it's what the mind believes, the body embraces. And you point to a study that shows that people exposed to ageism die nearly 8 years sooner than people exposed to positive views on aging. And that's from the World Health Organization.
Exactly. And it's even a little bit more upsetting than that. It's people who internalize those views about aging as negative. So that if I think that being older is a negative, then I'm going to have poorer health, poorer mental health, and yes, up to almost 8 years of less longevity. So it's really important to retrain our brains to understand that, and you know this, Bill, being older is very different than being ill. They get conflated in our society, in our language, but they're really distinct. And there may be some overlaps later on, but I'm really trying to get people to understand that we can make different choices about how we think about these chapters of our life that will really benefit us in terms of our health and longevity.
It's interesting because it's such a two-way street. There are a lot of people out there, rightly so, that talk about ageism, and there's a great deal of it. But a lot of ageism we perpetuate on ourselves. We figure, hey, I'm 60, I'm 65. Man, I guess my knees hurt. So instead of getting over it, maybe I should just sit around a lot more than I used to. But it's kind of from that culture. You can't go into a greeting card store without, hey, you're 50. Let me find your car keys for you. So there is this little drum beat of you're not worth as much as you used to be as you age. And unfortunately, we buy into that. And to me, that's the magic of your book, because you start by picking those things that we do laugh at because they are funny, but pointing out that they're not necessarily guarantees as we age.
Well, I'm very you know, I point the fingers at a lot of people, but I mostly point the finger at myself about things that I have done. And so, along the vein of what we're talking about, I used to send out those birthday cards that really made fun of my friends who were of a certain age, alluding to the fact, you can't hear, you can't see, you don't have much time left. I used to lie about my age when I was divorced and on some of these dating apps because I thought younger was better. I had all these justifications. But when you kind of add them up, you realize this is the problem. We think there's something wrong with being older, and we have more experience, we have a little bit more wisdom, we have more time often. So these are assets, and I'm hoping that people will come away understanding that there are choices to be made. And there's one thing
please.
I was just going to say, one thing that I experience so frequently, and I'm betting you have too, it's what I call the organ recital. And it's when folks get together and let's just say 50 plus, 60 plus, and, the conversation is all about, my elbow hurts, I have a heart blockage, on and on and on. And, when we talk like this, first of all, it's very alienating to anyone who is younger. And then they're going to start to perceive us as, well, we are, these old people are their illnesses, but so will we. So I say, limit that to a cocktail, and then move on and get to, the activities of the day.
Yeah, I think again, it's having a purpose, and it's being active, so you have something else to talk about. Sometimes as we tend to isolate and our world shrinks as we age, that's pretty much well, instead of how you doing, it's, hey, what's hurting?
Exactly. And, I see Larry B. Johnson posted, we are what we think we are, positive or negative. And that's exactly what I'm talking about. Thanks, Larry B.
Yeah, I think we get it. We kind of start to lose it, forget about it sometimes. It is funny because there are some things that you point out that actually are kind of grounded in reality. Do we actually start to smell old?
Well, there is a distinctive scent that scientists have said is associated with older people. But in studies, and I'm not going to tell you how they did these studies because they...
The old sniff test.
It's a sniff test, and they did different generations. So there is a different scent, but it is considered pleasurable by most. By contrast, teenagers' scent is considered not so pleasurable. So there are biological elements in being older, and that's a fact of life. And but they're not a given, and they're not necessarily negative.
I thought my wife was crazy when she would tell me that I'm starting to smell like Naugahyde and slip covers.
That's hot.
That's hot. It's very, very pleasing. Hey, this is another good one too that I will think about. Do we all just naturally become grouchy as we get older?
I wake up grouchy. And I've been waking up grouchy for decades now. We don't. There are a lot of stereotypes about, sort of grouchy, curmudgeonly, older people. But there's so many people who wake up, with joy and, a light step in their foot. I think somebody earlier said, they will feel like they're old when they don't wake up, sort of looking forward to the day. And that's not to say people who are suffering from a condition or an illness, very well may wake up, grouchy or in pain. And again, those are different things. I always like to, when I'm in a grouchy mood, I like to find one thing that will bring joy to me. And I have my puppy is sleeping over here. Sometimes it just may be, a flower or the sky. But if all of us can just, when we're in those moods, just look for one thing to bring a little joy, you'll feel it. And then you're more likely to spread that joy too. There's this wonderful social scientist at Stanford who talks about how joy and kindness is really like a virus. So if I'm kind to you, Bill, today, then you're more likely to be kind to somebody else. And that's the kind of virus that I really can stand behind, and we don't need to wear a mask to preventive.
or need a vaccine. And the other great thing too, Stephen, I think, is that the grouchiness is more of a reflection of what's inside of us than it is of what's around us. So
Yeah.
it's a warning sign for ourselves to maybe take a look at what we're feeling, what we're thinking, and turn it around a little bit. We're talking to Steven Petrow, author of this great book called "Stupid Things I Won't Do When I Get Old." I want to make sure you don't miss that because it really, really is worth picking up. It'll start the thought process, and most of the time we age in denial. We don't want to think about it, and I think, Stephen, I wonder, I wanted to ask you if a lot of it comes from staring face to face at our own mortality. You were kind of forced to do that years ago when you found out you had cancer. So how did that change you? What did you learn from that?
Well, so just so everyone understands, I was diagnosed with testicular cancer when I was 26. And so I was a young man at that time. And you know, like many young guys, kind of full of myself. I thought I was invincible, so on and so forth. And I quickly learned some lessons that none of that was true. And that really kind of humbled me in a way. It also pushed me to realize that that every day matters and how you choose to live your days matter. And I've certainly wandered, here and there from that, but it's something that I've come back to. I feel fortunate in some ways to have had serious illness early because it did ground me. It also it's put me in touch with the cancer community for my entire life, and I do volunteer work to this day with Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center in New York, the hospital where I was primarily treated, and so I have a sense of responsibility also in trying to share some of what I've learned over the years with other patients there now, and I think it also allowed me to tackle what's in the last part of the book. So the book is set up in three sections: stupid things I won't do today, stupid things I won't do tomorrow, and then stupid things I won't do at the end. And part of those things at the end are coming to grips with life does come to an end. And I remember, if you let me just tell this one story about my mom. She had terminal lung cancer. I was having a hard time with that, and twice she asked me, well, what happens when I die, Stephen? And twice I said, hey, Mom, what do you want for dinner tonight? I was not able to join her in that conversation. But when she asked me the third time, I realized I needed to step up and have that conversation with her. And I did. And that was great for her because I was able to impart some information. And it was great for me because I was able to really have an open conversation, get past some of my fears. And what she really wound up being afraid of was, will she be in pain when she passed? And she was not. And so in a way, that was beautiful to have that kind of conversation. And so with this book, I take some of these hard topics, death, dying, but also illness, disability, sexual dysfunction, and I bring humor to them so that we can find ways to talk about them because we're scared of talking about these topics in large part. And so if I'm your foil to get into a conversation that's important, so be it.
And thank goodness that you do that, Steve. I think that so many times it seems like we live life like death will never happen. And when it does, we think in our heads it's only because somebody messed something up. We don't ever discuss it. And as you point out in the book, it's so touching. We never say goodbye. And you were forced to look at this square in the eye. You had a very good friend who was in her 50s and had a glioblastoma brain tumor. And what she did, I mean, I'm sitting there in the office, reading through this with tears in my eyes.
That was my friend Jacqueline Zinn. We went to Duke together, and she lived here in the Chapel Hill area. And yes, she was diagnosed with brain cancer at the age of 56. She was married. She had 4 then young children, and her son Jerry was really kind to me. So Jackie, in her last couple of weeks, wrote, I think, 3 letters to each of her kids so that they would have them at various points after she died. One upon her death, one when they graduated from college, and then when they got married. And if you don't mind, could I just read part of one of the letters that she wrote to Jerry? Because she says it so much better than I do. Is that all right, Bill?
Absolutely. To me, this is the crux because man, I just lost my father a month and a half ago,
Yeah.
and
Sorry.
I didn't say goodbye. And he was 94, and we knew he was kind of going downhill, Stephen. But you always feel like if you say goodbye, you almost feel like you're sentencing them to pass away. So I just kept acting like it was nothing. It was wrong, and nothing was ever going to happen. And I can't believe I did that.
Yeah. Well, I try to say to people I'm really close with that I say I love you at the end of most conversations. Because we never know, you know,
Yeah.
when something will happen, and if that's how I feel, it's great to express it. So Jackie wrote this, and just so people can visualize, it was on a white legal pad, a blue rule, and she's writing with a blue ballpoint pen, and she had that kind of perfect penmanship that nobody has these days. You know, she learned to write in the '60s. You know, the G's are beautiful and the F's are, so on. So, dear Jerry, my budding filmmaker, I know you have a lot of emotions running through you, as I did when my father died, but I was much older than you at the time. So I really can't begin to comprehend what you are feeling. I'm so incredibly sorry that I had to die while you were so young, and I assume it sucks for you. Perhaps you can use some of these emotions and feelings in your upcoming work, and assuming you continue to pursue film. Let me assure you that I did absolutely everything I could to stay alive for as long as possible. I know you realize that having been with me at many of my treatments or tests, plus the acupuncture, tons of praying I also did. But for some reason, I just didn't make it as one of the chosen ones to be cured. But because of what I did, I'm sure I lived much longer than if I had not been in good shape to begin with. She then goes on to say how proud she was of him. Please support your dad and your siblings. And then she ends it, I love you more than you will ever know, my dearest Jerry. Love, Mom. And it's very kind of Jerry to share that, and I think very courageous of Jackie to have taken the time to do that and leave these missives that sort of arrive at different points in her kids' lives.
I can't even imagine how heartwarming it would be to have those letters. I mean, she wrote them for different occasions, right? Like for a graduation, for an eventual marriage, and not to open until these life thing happens. It's like still having her
Hmm.
and her wisdom and knowing that she's there. Stephen, that's incredible.
And I think there's something about the handwriting that we've kind of there's the lost art of penmanship. But her handwriting was so distinctive to her personality. I feel like I'm hearing her speak even when I've read those letters. And for Jerry and his siblings, it has to have been even more so like that.
Since we're on this tone, and this is another topic because so many people are faced with it, but your mother had dementia,
Hmm.
and so much of the angst and the fear and the pain from dementia comes from us not being sure how to relate to them. You want to get frustrated as they forget things or need to hear things over and over again. We don't want them to be like that, but yet if you were able to find a way to kind of accept the position that your mother was in, and really what you did was treat her with dignity and gave her the chance to have joy in the midst of her decline.
But let me be honest, I did not start at that place. I I remember when it started. I was with her at their house, and I got a phone call. I was standing next to my mom, and I heard my friend Holly say on the phone, "May I speak to Stephen?" And my mom said, "He's not here," and I am standing right there. And then she hung up the phone. So I turned to my mother and I said, Mom, I was really frustrated. I didn't understand. And there were a lot of instances like that in the beginning when she had not been properly diagnosed. And I didn't understand, and I was short-tempered with her. You know, fast forward over a period of 3, 4, 5 years, I learned more. Her diagnosis became more definitive. And I had a dog that developed dementia. And I saw sort of firsthand through the dog how lost she became and how much she needed me to be a guide. And I was able to take some of those lessons from my Jack Russell Terrier back to my mom, as odd as that sounds. And I do feel at the end, I was able to be with her. I was able to, be accepting and to be somewhat of a guide that she needed. But so many of us are struggling with parents and others that we love who have memory loss problems. And as much as it's a challenge for the individual who's going through that, it's also a huge challenge for their loved ones and caregivers.
Something else that you talk about in depth in the book that's really hit home with me is I guess it's our hesitation. I kind of brought it up with my dad, but our hesitation to say goodbye. And I think you had a couple of experiences where you thought it might be the final conversation and it really wasn't for a number of years. But there's no downside to that, right?
So you're talking about my friend Denise Kessler, who has sort of become the star of this book. And I met Denise when she was in her late 70s and I was in my late 30s, and I was trying to rent an apartment from her. She was too busy to schedule an interview with me. She was doing water aerobics. She was protesting some leftist cause here or there. She was working on the newspaper, and finally we did, and we became friends for 20 years. And I loved her. I would say I loved her like a grandmother, but I really didn't love her like a grandmother. I loved her like a friend because I learned so much from her. And I believe she learned different things from me because of our different places on sort of the lifespan. And what I love most about Denise was she was a member of the Greatest Generation, but she is what I would call a perennial. And perennials can be of any age. You can be 20, you can be 50, you can be 80. Because perennials are continually reinventing themselves. They're passionate, they're connected, they stay connected to people. They're very much alive, and they come back year after year after year, like the perennials in our gardens. And so Denise has been a role model for me, while she was here, and she passed about 6 years ago when she was 98. And I hope that we can all take this idea of becoming perennials and shift a little bit more into that, and also get away from some of the labels that we have for each of the generations, because millennial, Gen X, Y, Z, I think they are dividing us rather than bringing us together. And we have so much in common and so much that we need from each other. I want to kind of promote that as we move along here.
It's great. The experiences that you had were great, and you even had the courage to take the big flip. And the big flip is, okay, so we talk about being disappointed that we weren't there at the hospital when a friend passed, or we didn't reach out by phone because we didn't know what to say to somebody going through cancer treatments. But then you take it to the next level and you picture yourself on your own ultimate deathbed or decline. That is something, Steven, that, man, I don't think I've ever done that.
Did I do that?
Yeah. How you want it to be, how you want to go. We pretend like death is never going to happen, so we don't ever think to ourselves, what is a good death?
And I think that comes from having faced death in my 20s, with that cancer diagnosis. It took some of the fear away. And I do remember after I think it was an 8 or a 10-hour surgery that was quite complicated, I experienced sort of some of the early stages of what I think was dying. I sort of entered that tunnel, I saw that light, and then they pulled me back. And so I think I had much less fear later in life about that. So yes, I have a folder. It's actually right over here, called Memorial Service SP, and I've probably had it for 20 years, and I'm always like putting things in it. Where I want it to be, where I want my ashes to be scattered. If there's a service, I really want the theme song from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Love Is All Around, to be played, because anyone who knows me, but that's both sort of a favorite of mine, and I think the themes of it sum up my life. But so in a way, it's kind of a quirky, funny thing, but also it'll be a very useful folder for my loved ones when that time comes. And I say, when that time comes. I used to joke with my dad, he was a journalist and a writer, and he taught me about the subjunctive and when to use it and when not to. And I remember when later in his life, he was in his 80s, he said, well, if I die, Steve, but I'm like, Dad, wrong use of the subjunctive. It is when I die. And he said, oh yeah, you're right.
In a way, I would think it would be very liberating to just have that thought. And you're not obsessing about anything. You're just giving it some thought. It's something that goes through all of our minds as we see some of our friends and relatives go to. Thank you for that deep dive.
Well,
There is a lot. Go
I'll
ahead.
just say one other thing, Bill. On my book tour, I've met many people who have done similar things, and especially this one woman in Winston-Salem. She has like a whole loose leaf binder for her kids, and she updates it every year. It's got all of her passwords, all of her wishes, way more organized than I am, and really a great tool if that's something that you can push yourself to do.
Well, we've done a great job of lifting the lid and looking places that few are brave enough to go. But I'm a superficial guy, so I'd like to talk about some of the superficial fun things in the book too. So let's go through some of the stupid things that we talked about real quick, kind of like a lightning round. Your thoughts on coloring your hair?
Diane Sawyer, the newscaster, once told me, and I took it to heart, and to my hairstylist, anchors don't get older, they just get blonder. I followed her advice. I looked like a trashy secretary, and since then, I've stayed with my natural color and tried to be a little bit more authentic and a lot less beautiful than Diane Sawyer.
Age appropriate clothing.
Exactly. So this is where I love to get in a little dig at my ex-husband who doesn't want to get in something at their exes. So although we were the same age, he didn't like that I wore skinny jeans and sort of tight sports coats, and he told me I was inappropriate, and I told him to go see a lawyer. That was not the real reason.
Was he right?
It was not right. And the thing is, older people become invisible in this culture. And so, yes, if you've always dressed in a way that is distinctive or brings some amount of attention to you, keep with it, because we want to stay visible and vibrant.
How about only hanging with people our age?
I know. I love you, Bill, but it's great to have friends of different generations. We learn so much from them. They're different perspectives, and they learn from us. So, as I said with my friend Denise.
Something I do all the time, over answering questions like, how are you? How was your weekend?
So I write a lot about manners and civility, and the question, how are you, is really not even a question for most of us. And then, with some people, then you start to get this real answer, which is like, can be such a long-winded one and a bummer. The answer is, I'm fine. How are you? Unless it's someone who's close, and then you do want to get into some substantive ways that you're feeling.
So I honestly did this the other day. I went to get I never bring soup for lunch. I brought soup, so I needed to look for a spoon. I opened my drawer, and to my horror, you know what was in my drawer in my office desk? Tons of napkins. I'm a hoarder.
You're a hoarder. So, yes, I will not hoard the butter pats. That does come from my parents' refrigerator, who seemed to think that it was going to be, before we really knew shortages, they were sure it was going to be a shortage of butter and margarine. So they would take them from all the restaurants. The point there being, it's time to de-accension our belongings. We need less. And we also want to do that while we can, so that our next of kin do not have to do what my siblings did, which was empty 2 houses of my parents' stuff.
We did that too, and nobody needs extra ketchup packets. So
you never know, right? No, you don't need them.
Are we just more susceptible to fall for scams?
Well, yes. So, and there are people who are specifically targeting older people to take advantage of them, and that's a shame. And because many of our elders are living alone, are socially dislocated, these people know how to play into their emotions and often know how to take advantage of them. So it's really important that that folks pay attention. AARP often puts out lists of what those current scams are. So it's a real problem.
It's awful. Something I do that annoys everybody is I cannot, if you're riding in a car with me, I cannot go down the street without going, that used to be a sandwich shop. Did you know that was Miller's Hardware over there? That used to be a house. I can't help it.
And you know what? I bet you also would say, I used to walk 3 miles uphill in the snow to school every day and
Barefoot.
barefoot and then back 3 miles up in the snow. We're always making these comparisons. Nobody's really that interested. We are just kind of keep a little bit of a lid on it and stay, be here now, as the meditation folks tell us.
So writing these lists and pointing out these things and being aware of the things that you don't want to do is fantastic. Is it inevitable? Are we gonna do it anyway? Is it just part of our DNA? Are we going to be our parents, or can we kind of maybe skirt the more stereotypical ones?
So I was deluded. So I made my list, I wrote my article, I wrote my book, and I was like, well, all those things are in the future, and I'm not going to do them. Well, I'm now 64, and around the time that I turned 60, I noticed I started doing some of the very same stupid things that my parents had done. One of them in this very room that I'm in, you can't see it, but there's a bookcase in front of me here. And I needed a book from way up there. And I got one foot on the desk and one foot on the chair. I was in my stocking feet. And then I was leaping up to try to get the book. Stupid. And I said, Steven, it's time to get the stepladder. I could tell you dozens of those things. I can tell you dozens of things that, I see my friends struggling with. So, we're going to do some of them. But I'm hoping that we'll have a little bit greater awareness, and we'll do few of them. Or we'll learn from those mistakes before they become really big problems. But I had a grandmother who was stubborn. I had a dad who was stubborn. And you know what, Bill? I'm stubborn too. So, but I hope I'm going to be a little bit more mindful, and that this book will help others see some of those ways that we can make better choices.
It really does. And I think one good way to wrap up is, I think what you listed, it's kind of like it's a list of symptoms more than the real issue, I think. And I mean, it just seems to me that the thing that we really fear, it's not really getting old, but what we fear is being left behind, being left out, isolated and lonely. The kids don't call, there's no place for me to go. I don't drive like I used to. And I think it's just that fear, it's loneliness that triggers a lot of this.
That is brilliant, and that is right. And a sub-theme of the book is, this is a tool to help you stay connected to people you care about and to have them stay connected to you. So if you're going to be grouchy, you're not serving your own needs, and you're not serving the needs of those who care about you. I have this, it's kind of a silly chapter head. It's like, I won't double space after a period. Anyone who's going to type, when we did, double space. You don't need to anymore, but the big point in that chapter is, don't be fearful of the technology in our lives. Embrace it and use what you can to stay connected. So if your grandkids are texting, text. Don't insist on email. Don't insist on the phone. We all need to adapt and sort of find ways to come halfway at least. But I know so many people are just afraid of the technology, and they back off, and they wind up being more isolated as a result.
Well, there you go. It's not just a great book. It really is. It's a must read. It's a very quick and easy read. And boy, he sure has a great way of bringing us into a very interesting topic, a pretty heavy one, without us even realizing it. We wade in very safely because he leads in with humor, with observations that we can all relate to. And then before you know it, he's tugging at our hearts by pointing out how much he misses his parents, which we all feel, how much of them is in our DNA, and how we all see life from a very different perspective as we get older. It's just the way Steven Petrow looks at life. I know you'll be interested in checking out his other books and his columns as well. And he's just got a way of getting us all to think about the things that we tend to avoid and put off. You'll be all the better for it. And you can find more information at Steven Petrow, Petrow.com. What a great conversation. I really, really appreciate Stephen coming on with us and giving so much time. And it seems to have connected with a lot of you as well. As he pointed out, Patricia Bishop says the best part of waking up is waking up. Marie Ann O'Reilly Moran is interested in picking up the book, which I think is a smart move. You know, you can find it on his website, or I'm sure Amazon and different places. Sherry Beardsley turned 66 in 10 days, but refuses to be 66 in her mind. What is 66 in your mind? We did a presentation once in which we said, all right, close your eyes for a minute. Picture someone 80 years old. What do you see? And most people said they see someone laying in a bed or sitting on a chair with a blanket over their legs. And what we had for them when they opened their eyes, it was a photo of an 80-year-old gymnast, a woman who had taken up gymnastics and was doing things she never thought she would do. So it really, to an extent, much of what we believe, we manifest ourselves. And that's really important to remember. Thea Daniels says that grouchy is a sign to look at ourselves and turn things around. That's a great point. Helen Morrissey says she must not be getting old as she doesn't smell old. We never think we do ourselves, Helen. And certainly not grouchy, but she can't say the same for her husband. Mike, you're awesome. We love you. And so a lot of great comments here. And the reason is because this is an important theme. This is something to talk about with your own families when you have occasions and when you get together, when people come in from out of town. What do you like? What don't you like? What do you like to avoid conversationally? What conversations do you wish you could have? I think what we do is we kind of feel like we can make the decisions for people older than us. But I think if we allow the older people to be part of this, hey, do you want to talk about this? Do you think about your future? Are you afraid of what's to come? It's a good way to kick the door open to start having very interesting conversations. We had a great group in here with us today, and that makes all the difference. And it's why people like Stephen take the time. They love to get that feedback. I think what happens is you write a book, and if you don't have book signings like we haven't been able to have because of the pandemic in the last year and a half or so, you kind of lose touch with the people that you're writing for and trying to reach. So this is a good opportunity for all of us to come in and kind of think about things and place our thoughts out there in kind of a safe way. And here are some of the things that we did learn from Steven Petrow and from Growing Bolder too, that we should all try to keep in mind moving forward. Kind of a big wrap up here. Big point. Growing old, he said, is not the same as growing ill. And as we say all the time, age is not a disease. It's an opportunity. Oh, it can be hard. But the most important thing you can do is not to buy into the negative stereotypes about age that we're bombarded with, even the ones that come from inside us. Stephen has a quote from Jimmy Carter in his book that goes, "We worry too much about something to live for, something to live on, and not nearly enough about something to live for." In other words, to truly live, we need a purpose, we need a goal, a reason to get out of bed in the morning, something real to do. So don't let that inner voice that we all have inside, that voice of fear, of worry, don't let that dominate your thoughts, your dreams, your choices. Live with passion, live with purpose, curiosity, and adventure, with wonder and with joy in your life. We all can do that no matter what we face, what our situations are, or what we think about moving forward, because that's growing bolder. I'm Bill Schaefer. Our thanks to Steven Petrow. We hope you have a great day.